Because whenever alcohol was involved, something stupid would happen. And this is celebrated. You would go to one gathering and somebody would be like knocking back. It's like, oh, that person drank 10 beers. I need to beat that. We used to take pride in this, which is like looking back now, you're like, somebody could have died. I've had people do that and get their stomachs pumped out multiple times and they still haven't learned. And we joked. Being in those situations, it was all fun and games. I remember like one Thursday I was at work and my break didn't alone. I'm like, I missed my beer. This is I got to the end of the shift and I was like still kind of like, why am I angry about missing getting some beer? Like I hadn't seen my family at that point in like 7 months. What the has my life come to? If that is the thing that I look forward to the most, like what the hell? It's crazy when you think about it because alcohol, it's a depressant.
All right, what is up, everyone? Welcome to the Hey Hammy Show. Today we have our beautiful guest, Mr. Jon-Michaels.
I didn't get you cancelled.
Yeah, exactly. We didn't get cancelled, bro. So today's episode is going to be an interesting one because me and John have been talking, funnily enough, about alcoholism at work.
Uplifting conversations.
It is pretty uplifting, right? You know, like just getting high at work while we're getting drunk at work and
drunk on life.
Yeah. Drunk on life.
No, or water.
Yeah, the topic is pretty interesting because it started off with like me not knowing what an alcoholic is just because I'm not surrounded by people who like drink and I don't know what would be the definition. And I also told you, like, I think when we say alcoholic and when people listen to the word alcoholic, it may sound like when we hear like Wolverine or the American where that guy is drinking in a bar and he's just always drunk. But in reality, there's a lot of our friends or people that you guys may know of in your life that's like, they do have a drinking problem. And we're going to discuss a little bit of like the difference between someone's an alcoholic, someone who has a drinking problem, and a binge drinker, which I did not fucking understand what a binge drinker was. So maybe let's start with your journey first, so people know where you're coming from, and then we can go to like the topic of like alcoholism.
Okay, so my relationship with alcohol is very interesting. So, growing up in Australia, it plays such a heavy... It's like a heavy part of our identity. I have no idea why. It just is. So, So I had my first drink when I was 14. Which is pretty common. Most of my mates, that would have been the first time they ever would have had an alcoholic beverage of any variety. And saying that, the first time I had a beer with my dad was when I was 30, which is crazy. Almost all of my mates, as soon as they turned 18, they had a beer with like their dad, with their mum. My parents don't drink. So,
but he made you drink at like 13 years old.
So, no. So, as is the case, most people's first introduction to alcohol would be through an older sibling, or you'd have a friend that would have an older sibling. So, one of my mates, he had a brother who was 18, and back then it was so accessible and it was so cheap. You could get 30 cans of full-strength beer for $30, and you would get a slab of premix for like 40. So would pack that in a backpack, walk around the street, smoke cigarettes, do a lot of dodgy shit, and just drink. And like, the problem with a lot of these premixes, it's almost like drinking a soft drink. So you can't kind of sit there and your mind doesn't differentiate, there's like alcohol in here. So you're like smashing however many back, and then you're like 2 or 3 hours later, you're like, what the fuck? So like, the amount of times, like, we had mates that were, like, throwing up on the street. And, like, this is all, like, how most people get introduced to it. And then as you get older, so when you turn 18, you can legally buy alcohol. Now, when I was 18, that really didn't matter to me at all, to be honest. I could care less. But it was once you start getting into 18 around sports clubs. So, like, I played rugby. And in pre-season, you'd have a pre-season trip where you'd be drinking alcohol, and like that's how you would bond. It was like really weird when you think about it. You're bonding over something that's a depressant, but makes you feel invincible at the same time. It's like a really hard way to kind of like imagine it because it doesn't make any sense. And as you're going along, you play your game, and then you'd all sit down after the game and you'd have a drink with your opponents. And if you didn't, it was kind of viewed as, unsportsman. And then as you kind of go along, your post-season footy trip, like fucking hell, they were just carnage. Like, I remember we got like a bus up to like fucking Gold Coast, and the bus was dry by the time we got to fucking Wodonga. There was like 20 blokes, and we managed to get through like 15 cases of beer, like not even like fucking 6 hours from Melbourne from when we left.
Yeah. I just had a mate who had his postseason trip up to Gold Coast, and so he doesn't drink.
Oh,
He does not drink. He like, I think the most he's ever drank was like 2 beers at a party because he wanted to try it, and that's it. He's not a drinker. And when he came back and he was telling me about it, it was literally the worst experience of his life, because he was surrounded by people fucked.
yeah.
Beyond fucked, and he was just still sober. Yeah, it was crazy.
And so I'll like paraphrase this like again. So when you're looking at 18, so Victoria is crazy in the fact that when you turn 18, you get given the keys to adulthood. You can vote, you can drive without supervision, you can buy alcohol. Like, you're asking for so many problems with that. You're not getting it released gradually, so you're not forming habits that can be worthwhile. So look at America, for example. Like, you can drive when you're 16, you can't purchase alcohol legally until you're 21. So you have 5 years of being used to not being able to drink and driving, and being kind of like that being there. So like, if I'm going to a party and I'm driving, I'm not going to drink. The amount of times I had mates that went to me, I'm not going to fucking drink and drive when I get on full license. It's bullshit. Like, I had a mate who lost his license because he blew like fucking double the limit.
Yeah, that's fucked.
And
Because I didn't really think about it that way, saying that you get not only your license at 18 but the ability to drink as well. Because so many kids, and this was one point that I wanted to bring up, especially here in Australia, when we turn 18, we're like in year 11, year 12, and we gain that ability to drink legally, people just start having gaffs.
Yeah.
Gaffs on gaffs on gaffs. And half the time, they're not actually to socialize. No one goes to a party to like give a fuck about what everyone's up to in life. They're there to drink, and that's all it was. And on top of that, all these dudes would drive themselves to these parties and fucking hammer down. So I would love to know the stat of how many new probationary drivers get like clocked in for drinking and driving.
So I remember when I was 18, there was like a heavy push from the TAC, Vic Roads, one or the other. And it was all about, like drinking and driving, specifically as a probationary driver. Because, I mean, I don't think they would ever release the statistics because they'd be frightening.
Right? I mean, it would only make sense. It would only... Because there's like... in any social group or any circle of friends, everyone has a story. Not like, it doesn't have to be themselves, but everyone has a story of like a mate who drank and drive, or like a brother who drank and drive, or a sibling who drank and drive. And
on top of that, so like you compound with that, where then a lot of funny things happen when people get on the sauce.
Yep.
So like, it got to the point where my mate and they used to be known as the Jed and Johnny Chronicles. Because whenever alcohol was involved, something stupid would happen. And this is celebrated. Like, we used to take pride in this, which is like, looking back now, you're like, what the hell? This is like, somebody could have died. And at the time, this is being celebrated, and it's like a matter of, you're almost like you're gamifying it. So like, you would go to one gathering and somebody would be like, knocking back. It's like, oh, that person drank 10 beers. I need to fucking beat that. And like, I've had people do that and get their stomachs pumped out multiple times, and they still haven't learned. And we joked. we'd go out and we're like, oh, by the way, we called up Box Hill Hospital and they've got his room on like standby.
Yeah, because going back to the part where you said like when people after your footy games or whatever, you start drinking, right? In my head, as someone who doesn't drink and not surrounded by people who drink, I thought that was just something like you guys do like to have fun, like genuinely have fun, and there was nothing wrong with it. But like, to what point will it be like a problem? Do you know what I mean? Like, there will be obviously there'll be a lot of people who like have fun while they drink, but then to what point will that drinking like actually is a toxic thing and like it's a bad thing? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't get it.
Honestly, being in those situations, it was all fun and games. And it goes back to like, it's crazy when you think about it because alcohol, it's a depressant. Yet,
okay, explain like what do you mean by like it's a depressant?
So when you're sitting there, like some of the side effects of if you drink heavily or drink too much, anxiety, depression. So it can bring all these things to the fore, which normally you don't imagine giving you happy feelings or happy vibes. Now, my experience every time I was drinking, like as a teenager, never had that whatsoever. So like would say from when I didn't start drinking probably heavily until I was 21. So from 21 through to 28, like you would be just knocking him back and you would not be having any like regret feelings. If anything, it would make you feel like you're a fucking superhero. It's hard to explain because it just doesn't make any sense. The older you get and when you've kind of you realize because you've seen people like go through shit, you're like how does something like this give me feelings like that? And then how is that possibly like the backbone of a relationship that you have with somebody? So I don't know if it's like that now in sports clubs, but when I played rugby, there was a lot of older men. We'll call them men. I mean, they were older I was 21, they were like 24, 25. And they would be kind of like the ringleaders because they'd been around the most and like they would party the hardest. And as much as you want to fit in, so you don't want to say no because you want to fit in, you don't want to be on the outside. And then when it gets put into your head afterwards where it's like drinking forms such a big part of the Australian identity because like we value camaraderie, mateship. And alcohol is viewed as a lubricant for this. I mean, you go overseas and you tell somebody you're from Australia and they're like, oh my God, you guys make Fosters. First thing that comes to most people's minds is a brewery. Which is crazy when you think about it. And then on top of that, it's really hard to explain because as a teenager, like as a 21-year-old, you want to fit in. You don't want to be on the outside. And you want to feel liked by these people. These people are like, your male role models. Like, because generally the guys that are leading this are the best on the team. They get the most women. All things as a young male you put up on a pedestal.
And it becomes tradition, doesn't it? It becomes tradition throughout like the ages. So you step into that world first at like 16 to 18 when you like say you play the team sports, you go to the clubs, you do all of that, and you know of the older team club mates who go to pubs and sports bars and drink and stuff. And then if you carry down the same way, you play in the same team, you play in the same sports, you do that for a while, then eventually you go through different levels of where you stand. So like the older ones, like you said, like the 24, 25s, they're the ring leaders. And then as you go through, the tradition gets passed down to the younger ones, and it's like a whole thing. It becomes like a whole wave.
It's like when you look at, it's like, it can be characterized as toxic masculinity because all of these unrealistic expectations. And it would always be when you're at the club, it's like you play harder and you party harder. Yeah. And party harder now takes a whole completely different context. Because alcohol is so much more expensive now than what it was back in the day that now party harder includes more illicit substances. So, like, for example, I used to go out and I'd go to the pub and I'd spend like $150 and that would get me fucking like anywhere to 20 pints of beer. I would be spending that now and I would be lucky if I got like 10 with change. So everything is like so like outpriced, which is why it'd be interesting to see like if alcohol has had the same effect on a younger generation now than what it did, say, for my generation, based purely on like a price point.
Yeah, everything definitely has increased in price, but I think we're also talking about this. I think it's really cool to see like you're the young 20s, so I feel like you're in that stage of like people around you are going through this stage of life. And then people around my age at 26, like above what do you call it, like late 20s, yeah. I'm slowly transitioning to see like I have friends who went through what your friends are going through now, but it's like, okay, we've reached 26, 27, 28, 29. Can you still afford to be that person? Do you know what I mean? I have friends and people that I know of that's like are in their late 20s, and some are successful in their own careers, but some are like not even doing anything about their careers. And it's like they're still using alcohol as a way to cope with their feelings. And like you said, depressant, right? Like to suppress all these emotions, to like just black out the world. And it's slowly like I've realized like, oh, now that it's because I'm getting older, I've realized like, oh shit, like this is a problem. But I think when you're young, like you said, you don't see it as a problem. And I mean, to be fair, like we said, right? Like let young people have fun, let them go to the clubs and do all this shit. But then there's a certain age that you reach a point where like, okay, I think we have to change and do something about it. And personally, I mean, I'll share this on camera. Like I've had my experience with alcohol, and it was more like just for me to try it for the sake of it. And I tried like, I think we can go on to talk about like different types of alcohol. There's beer, mixed drinks, rum, whiskey, like that kind of thing.
It is a plethora.
Yeah, like you can really tell the difference, right? Like
Yeah.
even though they taste like alcohol, but you can really feel like beer is like, to me, just it is what it is.
Nectar
Like,
of the gods.
yeah, it's just addictive in a sense where like it's not nice, but I can see why in an environment everyone wants to drink it. And then like
Blasphemy.
spirits, right? Like soju's a spirit, yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like
it
a
is.
weird one to categorize.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is like, that makes you just, I don't know, like it's a different form of drunk, from like it's just different. And then there's also like mixed drinks where like you just keep drinking and you don't even know when you're getting drunk, and it just feels like you can just keep doing it.
It's like drinking a soft drink.
Yeah, it's like drinking a soft drink, and it can be a mix of anything, right? Like soju mixed with something, rum mixed with something, and you can definitely feel which one is worse and which one can be addictive. So like, to you, which one is worse? Like,
So for me, we've had this conversation at work.
yeah.
So I spent 13 years working in a bottle shop. And
We should have started off with that.
so I'll say this, where I've had a lot of experience with parents coming in with their 18-year-old children and, wanting to know what is the best, one that they can buy their child that'll be the safest. So when we talk about alcohol, we'll talk about a standard drink. So a standard drink is 10 grams of pure alcohol. So when you break that down, it'll roughly be a 30 ml shot of 40%. So spirit that's 40%. 100 mils of wine. Red is generally a little bit less than white. And on average, a pot of full strength beer is just over one standard. So that's 285 mil. So as a parent or as a newly 18-year-old person, I would say the best one to probably start off with would be a premix, and I would say a vodka cruiser. And I say this because one vodka cruiser is one standard drink. And half of when you're 18, you're invincible and you're pushing boundaries. So you want to see how far you can take it. How much can I drink? How much of... And like people assume it's vodka, so it's going to be really, really fucking like a high in alcohol volume. I'm like, that's what I would recommend, just purely because it's 4 drinks, 4 standards. They recommend that safe Australian health, when you go through all of like your RSA and stuff like that, they recommend that to be healthy, you would have in a week 10 standard drinks, or if you're going to do it in one day, you would have no more than 4, so 1 4-pack. For me, I personally think spirits, if you're going to start that way, and most people will now, purely from a price standpoint, is probably the most dangerous, because when you mix your first drink, it's probably going to be sensible. The more you go on, the stronger and the looser the pour gets. So I can say this, where one night I was playing poker with the boys and I killed a bottle of Canadian Club in 4 drinks. My first drink was like sensible. Second drink was third and fourth, forget about it. Third and fourth was probably 3/4 of a bottle. So I think if you're trying to push your boundaries to start off with, if you're going straight spirit, that's probably the most dangerous way to go.
I mean, see, the other thing is it's also most bang for your buck now.
Correct.
You can, in a 1 liter bottle of, I don't know, let's say Absolute vodka, I think you can get out of, is it 13 or 14 16 I don't know what the standard is.
More. Your average 700ml bottle of Absolute vodka is like 40% alcohol. So you're getting like 30 mil. You're getting like 20 standards.
About 20 standards. And those bottles are usually like, what, 30 to 35 to $40
when you get them on special.
When you get them on special and stuff. And there's always like at least some spirit bottle that is on special. You get it for that, like around the same price point.
So it was almost designed where, I kid you not, if you looked at, I built enough promotional lanes for BWS. I can say this because I no longer work for them. That they would always have, it would alternate. So you would have 700ml single price point on special, 1 litre bottle on special, twofer. Without fail. And there would always be a bourbon, a scotch, a vodka, a gin. Don't know why gin. I mean, it's pretty popular now. But when we talk about like this, so if you want to go into the differences of, so like beer, generally, if it's the German purity laws, it's going to be 4 ingredients. So it's going to be water, hops, yeast, and barley. Anything that's going to be spirit is going to be derived from a grain. But vodka is a bit different because you can make vodka from like potatoes. So Russian vodka is generally potatoes. If you're going to get like a French one, it's going to be from rice. Bourbon's generally like a corn or something like that. And then like cider is just a complete different kettle of fish. I'd actually say that probably cider might be the most dangerous.
Oh, you're not wrong.
Because if you technically, like if you have like a technical cider, it's going to be really tart and it's like not going to be palatable unless you like really enjoy that. Some of these ones that they come out with, it's like drinking fucking cordial supercharged.
It is. It literally is. It's so we were talking about premixes being like soft drinks, right? But even in like a premixed drink, like say you get like a Jack Daniel's rum and coke or whatnot, right? You still have that flavor of the rum in that drink. But something like I mentioned this the Somersby apple cider, right? You get 1 can of that. It's roughly 1.5 standards, 1.5 standards for 1 can. It tastes like apple juice. It tastes like straight apple juice. There is no hint of alcohol in that flavor.
And then Little Fat Lamb enters the conversation, and that runs at... So, like, in my time at BWS, when we first got it in, we used to get 10 packs of it at 2 standards. And we used to get people come in all the time asking for bottles. This stuff used to get at independent bottle shops, 3 bottles for $8, 1.25 litre bottles, and you'd be copying, like, 20 standards out of one. I drank one for shits and giggles. And as a seasoned drinker, and it's not probably something I should be proud to say, I'm like, I was feeling it after going through one. How do fucking 14, 15-year-old kids drink like 8 of them?
It's fucked. It's fucked. You know, absinthe is also on like fucking like the kids be getting absinthe these days.
So
like Green Fairy and shit.
If we want to go into this, then you've got like what they call fireproof liquors. So the most famous one of that is a little friend we like to call 151. So Bacardi 151 gets its name because it's 75.5% alcohol by volume. It-
75.
It is pure petrol. Like,
Yeah.
you do not drink that for enjoyment. And then you have Citrus, which hovers around that 60% mark. And there's this little rum from Australia called Stro. Runs at 80% alcohol by volume.
Damn.
So, going to my mate's 21st, it's in his backyard. His parents have put on a nice assortment of hors d'oeuvres. His brother has bought the alcohol. And the first thing I do when I get there is he's like, "Hey, Johnny, try this." And I just throw my guts up straight away. And I'm like, "What the fuck is that?" And he's like, "Oh, Stro rum, 80%. Like, these things are not enjoyable. And then if you go out, I guarantee you'll do it when you turn 18 or 19. If you know people that drink, you'll order an ABC. That is the holy trinity of fireproof alcohols. It's a shot comprised of absinthe, 151, and citrus. Like,
It's crazy, yeah.
and then the other thing you'll probably get is a Long Island iced tea,
Yeah.
which
I know.
has 5 shots in it. I remember being out at a Bucks night once, and thank God they don't do this now because they're wised up. We ordered the guy who's getting married a double Long Island iced tea. He was off his face instantly. So, like, we can say, if you're going to categorize it, like, people are probably going to try those. I'm not too concerned about those because the price points on them are stupid. Like, I remember the one time I bought a bottle of 151, it cost me like $60. You're not buying that for $60 anymore. You're going to get something like... Honestly, I reckon most people are probably going to go with vodka because there's no taste to vodka. So when you're looking at kind of like spirits as well, like, there's different taste profiles. So rums are generally really sweet. Bourbons can be really harsh. There are a few on the market that are smooth, but like, I don't know anybody that's going to be hammering back 30 bourbons in a night. So back in the day, our exalted leader Kevin Rudd, in his infinite wisdom, to try to curb people like drinking excessively, so binge drinking. So
Did we get there? All right, we'll get to that point. I think we'll skip the what were we talking about before this? The bin, whatever it
get
is.
to the meat of the bone.
Yeah, we'll talk about that, the difference between an alcoholic, binge drinker, and also someone who has a drinking problem. We talked about it at work, and I think I've been surrounded with people who I would categorize as having a drinking problem, because I do have friends and people around me who, like, it's a coping mechanism, right? I have friends who, like, I don't know why I don't really have guy friends who are like, I think it's good, like, we're gonna equalize each other, but like, I have girl friends that are like, they use it to cope with like heartbreak or like stress from work, whatever it is. We can't go there, yeah? We can't go to that person, yeah?
No. So
Yeah.
we can say, so like, we've spoken a lot about this at work and how, I remember because when it first got brought up, you were just always kind of like, I don't understand why. And I can tell you, anytime I've been severely, like, I've hit it severely hard, there's always been like something that's pushed it to the forefront. Now, is that just me saying this to justify the actions that I did? Looking now, probably. But like, I mean, I remember one boys' weekend, I went through like a messy kind of exchange with this female that I was seeing in a romantic way. And it went south.
Just your girlfriend at the time, yeah.
And she wasn't my girlfriend. It was just somebody that, I mean, it was more than friends with benefits.
Oh, John, you had a situationship, bro.
I had a
You had a
situationship.
situationship.
So it kind of went left really, really quick, and I was just like in such a bad headspace. And you compound that with a boys' weekend, like never like a good idea. So boys' weekends for me would be, I could tell you our shopping list. So like, I'll tell you the shopping list, and then you'll be surprised when I tell you like what it was. So generally it'd be 4 bottles of spirits. So we'll say 2 scotch, 2 bourbon, 6 cases of beer, and 1 bottle of bubbly. That was just for me. And that's not including the beer I was drinking on the way to Phillip Island, which is a 90-minute drive. So that was easily another 12 beers.
Yeah, that's fine. Oh my god.
And at the same time, my partner in crime, or my toxic twin, the Jed and Johnny Chronicles, he would be having the same amount. And then the third amigo of the trio, he would be a little bit more sensible. He would have 3 bottles of spirits. So this one instance, and honestly, like, they joke with me that I'm a cat and I've got 9 lives, because I probably shouldn't be walking the earth after this incident. But it got to the point where, like, I just got put in such, like, a headspace that woke up on Saturday morning and I knocked back a case of beer, wake up at like 6, by 8:30 in the morning. And then somebody in the infinite wisdom thought it would be a good idea to invite some ladies along to Boys Weekend.
Just real quick, can you tell everyone what how many cans is 1 case of beer, or bottles?
24. 24. So
24 cans.
24. So
How are you alive, bro?
we can get to stories about how, like, I talk about, like, the gamifying of things when you go out. So
Yeah.
every year from when I was 21 through to 28, we used to go to Hofbräu House for each boy's birthday, yeah? And you go to Hofbräu House, you're getting a stein of beer. So you're getting 1 litre of beer.
Yeah.
I hold the record for the consumption of beer at Hofbräu House amongst the boys at 10 steins.
Damn.
That's 10 litres of beer. When people sit there and, like, they go to parties, they're like, oh, you know, I've got a hard-earned reputation. I fucking drink, so whatever. If you're in the right headspace, which is probably not, it's the wrong one, if you're being controlled by emotions or if you're not thinking clearly, knocking back that amount of beer was like drinking water. Like,
It also becomes a little bit of a pride thing, doesn't it? Like, I
Correct.
can drink a lot.
and as a male, alpha male, I'm going to exert my dominance. So 24 beers in 2.5 hours. And then I was like, whoa, one of the guys is like, yeah, look, let's, like, cook something. So, like, I had some breakfast. And then they're like, oh, yeah, by the way, we invited some girls along to Boys Weekend. I'm like, why would you invite girls to Boys Weekend, right? So then, didn't get any better after I had something to eat and they told me that. Because I'm like, this is just fucked. So, proceeded to drink even heavier. So, like, before the girls turned up, there's pictures of me, like, laying in the middle of the fucking road, cheersing with beers. I couldn't tell you how much I drank at that point. It was a lot.
Yeah.
So much so that then, when the girls came around, I was so fucking shit-faced smashed, I could not even tell you, like, I, like, passed out, like, in the front yard, yeah? Like, passed out. To then wake up with a house full of naked women and, like, all the guys naked. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, have I, like, woken up in an orgy or some shit? And apparently, like, so in my drunken state, I got highly aggressive, which is really odd because I'm not an aggressive individual.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know, like, thought it was a game, like throwing drinks at people and shit. And then, like, yeah, I remember my mate looking at me. My mate's like, how the fuck did you not have to go to hospital with alcohol poisoning, for starters? But it wasn't until like a month or 2 later where it came up in conversation and they were like, dude, like, we've never seen you hit it that hard. Like, why did you hit it that hard? And it's like, emotions are a funny thing. Like, emotions are, as much as people sit there and say, my emotions don't dictate how I act, emotions dictate everything.
Yeah.
And if you're in a bad headspace, and again, like, it's the fucked up thing, like, it's a depressant, but you're drinking that because you feel it's making you feel better, but it's probably making it worse.
Yeah. And then what I see with people is, like, for example, they go through, like, a bad thing in life, be it financially, relationships, or whatever. not only do they drink during the worst time and then they take that depressant, when things actually get better, they actually still do drink afterwards, and like it keeps this like Matthew Perry, right? Like he just kept drinking to feel okay. When things are okay as well, like sometimes like it's okay, you're like, wait, this is too, like I'm sober and things are normal. They find it weird and then they continue drinking. Then I feel like that's where the addiction, as you know, like slowly starts, right?
And I think when you could say that as well is the shoe on the other foot. They could go, well, I was at my worst, but doing this, now everything is better. So if I keep on doing this, life is going to be roses.
Yeah.
So it's always kind of like, it's a slippery slope. It's if, some people sit there and they view it as like, my life's gone to shit. Oh yeah, I drink every day and now my life is great. I need to keep on that because if I stop, it's going to go back.
Yeah.
And I guess this is where, if you have friends, and I can say like at that point in time, like, and I mean, I remember having this conversation with you at work. Initially, when most people met me and like the three amigos, the first comment they're like is like, alcohol is the thing that's kept your friendship. Like, that's what your friendship is based about, is purely about drinking. If you've got people enabling you, and if like something like that is what's tying your friendship together, I'd be severely worried because
Enabling, yeah.
While drinking has played a big part of the stupid shit we've got up to, there's so much more. So like my mate Jed, we played rugby together. My mate Dave, I go see movies. Like there's still ones where we'll find like a weird craft beer and we'll like send a picture to each other, and that's still part of it there. Like we still catch up and we'll go have a beer, but most of the time it's because we want to go somewhere and have a Palmer. Like the beer is always an afterthought now. And maybe that's because we're all in our 30s.
I think you mean like when alcohol is the reason you hang out.
Yeah.
Compared to like, let's go have dinner and then maybe have alcohol is fine. But like, I think the difference with enablers is like, dude, let's hang out and like just talk and like drink. Then that's the...
And I'll say when I was like younger, so when I was like 25 and poker was like big on the thing, so much of meeting it was like when you're 18, it's gatherings and it's like alcohol is the thing that brings everybody together.
Such a good point, yeah.
But at the same time, it's like when I was 18, you know how many people that I go to those gatherings that I talk to now? 0. My best mate that I went to high school with came to my high school in year 12, my final year. And there was like nothing whatsoever was like associated with going to gatherings or anything. It was we had a mutual interest of going to see movies because like we like seeing like fucking fucked up foreign films. And then it was when we turned 18. So he turned 18. So I'm younger than all of my friends. So when they were all 18, I was 17. So kind of like when I turned 18, they were the ones that took me to the pub for my first 18th. Like everybody else generally like they've got an older sibling or a parent. That'll be like the rite of passage. And I think for a while I was glad that I was 17 because having that 9 months meant that alcohol wasn't kind of like the backbone.
Yeah.
It did lubricate a lot of things. Like once we kind of started getting to 21 and like, we're like, oh shit, let's go away for weekends and cause mischief. Alcohol was always involved. And it would always be like, our shopping list would always be the alcohol shopping list. That'd be the first one.
Yeah. I loved how you brought out that like the differentiation between going out to have like a movie or chicken parma, whatever it is, and then having alcohol. But the enablers are when people just hang out like, oh dude, let's have a drink. I think to me, as someone who doesn't drink, I think now I can see like the difference between someone who's on the path of like being an addict or having a drinking problem compared to someone who actually like just goes out and enjoys a drink.
I think in moderation. So like, for example, there are times where like the whole sole purpose has been like, let's go out and let's have a drink. But it's like you're going for like a whiskey tasting experience or you're going to like a distillery. Breweries kind of blur the lines.
Yeah.
Because like if I go to a brewery, I'm not buying a fucking tasting paddle.
Yeah. Unless like you're dating someone and like, oh, let's go to brewery every single time we go on a date, then I think that's that's a different
my
problem.
first 3 dates with my girlfriend were at the pub.
That yeah, okay, I see that. Yeah.
So like the first time I met my girlfriend's dad was he likes a beer as much as I do, was at the pub. So I think like, which is why like I can sit there and like, if you're going to go out, going to like a distillery or going to like a winery, I don't think it's really kind of like going to one of those is an event in itself because like you're going for an experience.
Yeah.
If you're going to like a fucking brewery, like if I'm going to a brewery, I'm going there because I'm like going to sink as much beer as I can. Like breweries are dangerous. Like I love like going to breweries because I love tasting all the beer.
Yeah.
But like at the same token, like if I went to like a distillery, I'm not going to smash back like fucking 10 gins. It's just it's not feasible for me. But and I think when you're younger, that's where it kind of comes in. It's not like let's go out and get a Palmer. It's like let's go out and drink a lot, and then the food is the afterthought.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, occasions matter. The age and like the stage in life you're at when you drink all these things matter. So like, I think the question is, we already heard so much stories of your crazy drinking stories. Then what was your like tipping point of like, dude, like this is a problem?
So my tipping point was COVID. COVID impacted a lot of people, so many ways.
And how old were you at this time?
30 odd.
Okay.
So it would have been first lockdown. So it would have been like 36. So like I remember sitting there, and there was a brewery like right like down the street from where I live. It's really convenient. Like and every Thursday they used to have their Crowler Thursdays is what they called it. So would buy one get one free on a Crowler, which is like a 1 litre can of beer off tap. And so I used to buy like fucking like 4 or 5 of like those, so like 10. Yeah. And I remember like one Thursday I was at work and my break didn't align. I'm like, fuck, like I fucking miss my beer. This is fucking bullshit. Like, what the fuck? And I was like really fucking pissed off. And then I got to the end of the shift and I was like still kind of like sitting there, and then I was kind of like thinking, and it's like why am I angry about getting some beer? Like I hadn't seen my family at that point in like 7 months. So like hadn't seen my mum or my dad, hadn't seen my sister, hadn't seen my nieces or nephews. Like I'm getting angry for the sheer fact that I missed a cutoff of 10 fucking beers as opposed to not being able to spend time with people I actually give a shit about. So that was kind of the one where it was like, and then it's like, if I'm getting pissed off about like missing out on 10 litres of beer, like what the fuck has my life come to? If that is the thing that I look forward to the most, when everything is gone to shit, like what the hell? Like I would be more concerned about like not being able to see my like family. And then around the same time that happened was my nan passed away. So she was interstate, so we couldn't go to the funeral because we were all locked down. And like again, that kind of, you know, put it into context. It's like there are things that are happening with people I care about, and I'm getting pissed off about missing out on 10 litres of beer. Doesn't make sense, does it? And then I remember looking on my bank app going, shit, how much do I spend on like fucking beer during COVID? And it was ridiculous. But my justification was, and this is also the issue when it comes to like anything that's addictive and habit forming, is that you always have a justification. My justification was, if I don't buy from these people, these things are going to close up and the things that I like drinking are not going to be here. That would always be my justification. And it was like, what I was spending on alcohol was ridiculous. It was like literally like fucking, I couldn't tell you, to easily be like $100 a week on beer.
Yeah.
So that kind of like put it into focus. Now I can tell you as a 21-year-old, furthest thing from my mind. I used to drink 30 beers a fucking week.
Yeah, that's why I say like the age and like stage in life matters as to how much you drink.
And like 30 beers. And I remember telling Yudo that, and he looked at me. Like 30 beers, this is over 2 nights. Friday and Saturday night.
So it was. What did you tell? Like in the stock room, was it?
About what?
No, just the story.
Oh, about... Oh, there's a lot of stories with that.
Yeah, no, but okay. So I was just minding my business, right? And John was there with me, and we were just chilling. You know, we were hanging, we were doing our work.
Oh, is this about my intervention?
Yeah.
So
every single time I was doing anything in the back room with John, he'd always tell me some random ass story about it, like his time in his like youth of just absolute shit. Every time he told me something, I was flabbergasted. I was like, this man, like I think one of my first reactions was before like I deeped it or anything, my first reactions was like, oh, Johnny Boy's lived in a fucking amazing life.
this is the fucked up thing.
Exactly, yeah, that because that was my first reaction. My first reaction, damn, wow, what a night, that sounds epic. And then it was only like until, I don't know, I had like a few occasions where like alcohol was the main reason why something fucked up, right? And I thought about it, I was like, that doesn't sound that good anymore. Yeah.
So we talk about it wasn't until I hit like 30s that I kind of evaluated. So when I was 26, I had one of my friends, a girl I was seeing. It's like a girl
Another situationship, yeah.
No. This was a relationship.
Okay.
I'd went out with her when I was like 17. Then we kind of like never broke up, and she went overseas, and then she kind of came back into my life about like 22. So my folks are away, and she like bought a slab of Corona. Fast and the Furious. If you want to drink any beer in my house, make sure it's a Corona. So she bought a case of Corona, and I'm like, okay, cool. And she's like, I'm like, oh yeah. And I had the boys come over, and we're playing cards. Where we thought it would be a laugh to see how many empty beer bottles we could get on the end of a table. 100 later, and then I remember like going, it's like fucking 4 a.m. in the morning, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna fucking put this in the recycling bin when I wake up. This is like fucked. Like I can't deal with this. She comes over the next morning, rings the doorbell. Fucking like, what the fuck is this? It's like, been on 4 hours of sleep, and she just sees all the empty beer bottles, right? And she's like, I think you have a fucking, like, she's like, what the fuck? I wanted a Corona. I'm like, yeah, there's no more of those left. Boys came over last night. We kind of, had a... So then 2 weeks later, she's like, Johnny, gonna have a party, me, Catherine, some of our friends. I'm like, oh, okay, sweet. Turn up on the house on the front doorstep, slap on my shoulder, let me in, and there's like a fucking semicircle in the main room with a chair in the middle, yeah? Where they proceed to give me a intervention for my drinking problem. I turned up to my own drinking intervention with a slab of beer on my shoulder.
Oh, God.
Where they proceeded to tell me with people that... The only people that probably could have spoken to how much I drank them were Amy and Catherine.
Shout out to Amy and Catherine, right? You saved this guy's life.
Everybody else in that room, I'd maybe met once, twice, possibly 3 times. And they were always at gatherings and parties where like it was heavy alcohol consumption. And they were like, John, we think you have a problem. And I'm like, what the fuck? And it's like, we think you drink too much. So like, you told me it was a party. I came to a party with a slab of beer and you're giving me a drinking intervention. Like, what the fuck? And they're like, Amy was like, oh, I came over to your house, there was 100 beers. I'm like, I had the boys over. I'm like, why aren't my friends here? And it's like, because you fucking drink with them. I'm like, no shit. At least I'm not drinking by myself. So, like, I think it also depends on who the message comes from as well. Like, drinking intervention, fucking hilarious and funny story. And, like, let's not get into the fact that probably alcohol shouldn't be a joke. Like, not, because it can be one of those things that can have such a big impact. But yeah, at the same time, you're like, what? I remember going like, what gives you the right to fucking criticize and judge me? And this is when I was drinking 30 beers a week. So like, again, if you say that by sheer volume of numbers, people are like, you're an alcoholic. It's like, well, and we have this problem at work because trying to define what an alcoholic is so difficult. Yeah. So like, if you look at what they say is proper consumption. So healthy consumption is 10 standard drinks in a week. Yeah. Or no more than 4 standard drinks in a day.
Yeah.
Heavy drinking is more than 15 standard drinks in a week. If you're going to a party and you're having a 6-pack of beer, that's almost your limit. Yeah?
Yeah. And I think on our pod, it's like we're just a bunch of guys and we have concluded that we want to use the term...
problem.
Alcohol problem, because we have no scientific proof or like background to like justify someone being an alcoholic. But it also goes down to whatever we said is like the amount of drinks is one thing, binge drinker or whatever. It's at the end of the day when it's taking over your life and you have problems that you don't want to fix and you keep drinking your problems away or whatever it is, then like the problem is there. And
if all you have to look forward to in the morning when you wake up is a fresh drink,
yeah,
I think maybe reach out to somebody, or maybe like, it's hard because you can sit there and you can say you need to reevaluate, yeah?
Yeah.
But by the same token, like, we laughed about it at work. When I started going to the gym, I used to like go to the gym and like carrot or the stick when I was forming my habit was have a can of Guinness afterwards.
Yeah.
And I remember telling that to Hamka, and when I told it to you today, you were pissing yourself laughing. Because you're like, that's the problem though. But I wouldn't just drive to the gym, step foot in and go, yep, done my part, and go home, I'm going to fucking crack back my Guinness. It's, you're forming the habit is, I wouldn't have the Guinness unless I put in the workout that I was going to do. It's almost like The Rock with his cheat day, yeah? Like,
yep.
He adheres to such a strict regimen for 6 days of the week that one day lets him get loose. And, like, you tell people that about, like, the Guinness, and they're like, oh, it sounds like you got a bit of a problem there, Johnny boy.
Yeah.
And I think this is where kind of... I think problem is... I think for us would be the best phrase to use, because I don't know anybody that... I mean, I know a lot of people that... Well, I think we diagnose way too quickly.
Correct.
So everybody wants a diagnosis so they can justify. Yeah. I do this because of this.
Right. Isn't it interesting? We talked about this yesterday. We were like, people diagnose other people or themselves to justify their vices or whatever, instead of, I have a problem I need to fix. Do you know what I mean?
And then the shoe on the other foot is, though, like, we all have our vices.
Yeah. 100%.
And that's what makes life so interesting. If all of us were clean cut and we didn't have any devils on our shoulders, it'd be a really boring fucking world.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's hard to, like, problem is, but then, like, one person's problem is another person's solution, yeah?
Yeah, and I remember Tom Holland saying this on a Jay Shetty podcast where he said, alcohol has been too normalized in society as like it's just alcohol. But what if someone comes up to you and be like, dude, I have this potion for you, yeah? When you drink it, you don't know whether you'll sleep, you'll get angry. Like, you don't know. Like, it's just a potion. Just drink it, bro. And immediately I'm like...
It's true.
It's true, because hearing you get addicted to alcohol, to me as someone who doesn't drink any like at all, basically at this point, right? It's like, how do you get addicted to a drink? That's like me saying like, dude, I'm addicted to potato chips. Like, I can't fucking stop eating potato chips. It's
dopamine hit, man.
Yeah, it's insane how much like it can actually take over your life and how dependent you can be on it. It's actually insane. And we'll go a little bit towards like the religion side of things that I wanted to talk to you about, right?
I think that helps normalize it as well.
100%. In Islam, it also took years for it to be like fully haram in Islam, right? Like, so drinking alcohol is haram in Islam, but funnily enough, when in case you didn't know this, like how the religion started, it started with the belief first basically in a time where Arabs were pagan, they were praying to like statues and stuff. Then Islam came about to be like, look, there's only one God, pray to this. So there was no like rules yet. And then slowly they were like, okay, alcohol is not good for you. Like, try not to drink it. And then a few years down the line, when we had our 5 prayers a day, then more revelations came out. Don't drink when you're about to pray, or don't be intoxicated while you're praying. But then obviously down the line, some people while they're praying, I'm assuming they'll be like, oh, that kind of shit. And then finally, the Quran, finally the third revelation, the 3 phases, he was like, all right, alcohol is done. Like, we have to stop. And it's interesting to hear that, because that means alcohol is such a addictive thing that even God is like, they need time. Like, God didn't be like, Islam is starting, cut. You know, even God is like, I know the Arabs need time, or people in general. Do you know what I mean?
And I think it kind of goes back to when you look at it, especially in a Victorian standpoint, where we give you the keys to everything at 18. So, but then from like a Christian standpoint, it's so funny because we're looking at the body and the blood of Christ, and the blood of Christ is sacramental wine. Yeah. And it's such a big deal. Like when you turn 12, 11, whatever it is, and you know, Eucharist, it's like, yeah, body of Christ. And then it's like a big deal when you get the first time of like dipping your bread in the blood of Christ. So it's like so normalized that it's almost like, well, you know, the religion doesn't find it too faux pas, so it can't be too bad. You know, the more messed up thing about it though is when you sit there. So like, there was one boys' weekend where we had at Pambula, and it was the most epic day of drinking ever. We've like the boys had ever done, and it's held up on such a pedestal. I kid you not. It was 10 years ago, and every time we see each other, it's the fucking first thing that's brought up. You remember that day at Pambula where we drank fucking like 6 bottles of Woodford Reserve and all? Like, it always gets brought up. I don't bring it up anymore because I'm like, dude, it's in the past, and like we've all got other shit going on in our lives. If you're looking back and thinking the best day of your life is being involved in a session where you're drinking a lot of beer and like 6 bottles of black bourbon, you've not had a good 10 years, yeah?
Yeah.
Like, these are people that have like got engaged, got married, like big life moments. And you're looking back at being with 4 other guys sitting around in your fucking board shorts, drinking yourself silly.
Yeah, I think it's one thing to reminisce, right? I think it's one thing to reminisce, but it's like another to have that as one of your main topics to talk about with your mate.
Yeah.
Because like me and my boys, like over it's not been long, but 4 or 5 years, we've had some nights where we've gone crazy, we've really fucked shit up, but every time I meet one of them, we don't go like, oh bro, you remember fucking 6 months ago that one night we got absolutely fucking smashed? No, I'm talking to him about like the new fucking Marvel movie that just came out.
So I had one person in my life and that's all they did, yeah? So much so that I had to make an effort. I made the conscious effort where I was like, okay, next time if I see him, if this is all he's going to bring up, I'm just going to like try to steer the conversation in another way. And if it didn't go there, I was just like, no. Like, again, like reminiscing is great, but if you're living in the past and if that's the highlight, and like this is a guy that has a kid.
Yeah, like, right.
Like, surely that's a more momentous milestone in your life than drinking a lot of alcohol. But I think like going back to like where we're talking about normalizing it, I think it's so funny that Australia as a culture, it's so intertwined, but there are other cultures where alcohol plays, like it's there. Maybe it's not at the forefront to the extent, but like when I was in high school, I had a lot of mates that were Italian, and every time you'd go over to their house, you'd go for dinner, there was always be like a glass of wine. But these are guys that when you'd go out, they wouldn't drink themselves silly. So they were kind of like, I guess, nature versus nurture. They were brought up around this. And they never used to get drunk because if you get drunk, you can't get it up. So like one of my mates, I would know if he was going over to have some carnal thoughts with a lady because he would send me a message going, just had 4 shots, just drank 4 beers, and I'd be like going, like, dude, come on, really?
Come on now,
Yeah.
bro.
And I guess talking about that can also lead to some dubious decisions. One of my mates, will name him DD to keep his identity private because it's really embarrassing. I remember going after, it was our rugby grand final. So we played the game, we won. We drank way too much. Like, they literally put an open bar on at the rugby club. So fuck, it was a lot. Then we went back to his house afterwards, drank some more beers. We knew we were going to his sister's 30th. Had 2 cases of beer on ice for us there. Had a pizza. And then he thought it would be a good idea to take a whole shot of, like, a whole plate of jelly shots. This guy was so drunk, he starts giving this chick a fucking lap dance. Like, giving her, like, fucking gyrating and shit. Like, a sight I've never seen of him, yeah? And then, like, so, like, the conversation then starts getting on, like, about, like, sex and prowess. And he's like, oh, yeah, like, women have said I'm the biggest they've ever had. And he's like, oh, yeah, it's so thick, it's a 50-cent piece. And I'm like going, I saw a side of my mate that I'd never seen at that point. And I'd been through a lot of shit with him. And I'd known him at that point for like 15 years. And then he proceeds to start making out with this chick whose boyfriend is asleep in the living room. And I remember like going, yeah, do you two like want a room? I'm like, she's like, oh shit, oh, I need to go to the bathroom. And my mate's sitting there trying to fucking button up his shirt. And this image is forever burned in my mind. Because his buttons aren't fucking aligned. It's like all over the shop. And he's got like his dumb drunk expression on his face. And I remember looking at him and I'm like, okay, mate, this is probably what's going to happen. She's going to come back and she's either going to offer to have sex with you, have sex with me, or she's going to offer a 3-way. And I'm like, either way, we should probably go back to your house. Because you don't want to be involved with any of this. And he's like, oh, but man, it's like 6 months. I'm like, her boyfriend is asleep in the lounge room next door. And he's like, snooze, you lose. And I'm like, what? Like, what the fuck? And he's like, it's been 6 months. I've got blue balls. And I'm like, okay, like, I'm fucking out. So she comes back. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going. And she's like, oh, well, do you want to stay and we'll make it memorable? Like, fuck off. No, I'm going home. This guy was like so far out of his mind that something as simple as, oh my God, she's got a boyfriend, didn't even fucking enter into his thought process. And I think that's, the dangerous thing when you're looking at alcohol and the possible problems that it can cause.
Yeah.
Is it takes all sense of rationalization and reason out.
Yeah.
You hadn't heard that one before.
As I think when like you said, right, like when you tell the story, it's so obvious. Basically, this whole episode so far with your stories has been like us reading our Reddit stories, but like in real life from your stories. But when you're in that situation, it feels so like you can just do whatever like it's happening in front of you, and like it gets very, I guess for him, clouded with like the alcohol and everything.
It makes you feel, it's like a weird combination. So like, makes you feel like you're Superman, you can run through anything. It gives you such a euphoric state that nothing else seems to matter. It's like when you read about how people talk about like, you know, oh, when I do fucking inject heroin and it's such a dopamine hit and makes people feel so good.
Yeah.
And I think realizing this now, older, was like the reason why I continued to drink when I was that age was because I wanted to keep that feeling going. Which you roll it back to Matthew Perry and you'll see like he was down in a spiral and then, you know, he started drinking and maybe everything turned like good, and then it's the same thing. You're chasing that feeling.
Yeah.
which is, why possibly we could say alcohol would be probably one of the most dangerous drugs because it's a drug.
It is, and yeah, I want to end it off soon because we've gone for quite a bit, but it also goes down to what you said, like why you're drinking. Like how Italians like have wine with their food, and I can talk a little bit about this. I went to therapy just now, right? And my therapist said to me like, "Oh, do you go to the gym as like a distraction?" And I'm like, "No, like gym isn't my distraction. It is how I'm healing myself." And it's interesting how just changing the words in your head can flip your whole mind around, because I mean, there's no way around alcohol, right? It is a drug. It is a depressant. Like you can't say like, "Oh, alcohol is helping me." Do you know what I mean? But I think I want to ask you one last question, which is like, is it ever worth it to use alcohol to cope, to use it as your depressant, or is it better to just like, look, you've been through everything, it's better to actually take it out of your life?
So for me, like I drink significantly like less now than what I used to. So funnily enough, I get like craft beer sent to me in a box. Like every month, 12 beers without fail. You know how many beers I have sitting in my fridge at the moment? 36, like my last 3 months worth, yeah? I think it's more so, it's nothing like that's ever worth considering to help you, because at the end of the day, it's like an instant gratification. It's like if somebody makes you angry and you call them a fucking dickhead. Instant gratification. Does it solve the problem? No. And I think the biggest thing with that is like you need to break down the stigma. And it's still heavily stigmatized that if people have problems, you internalize that. You don't talk about it. It is getting better. Like now, you look at most workplaces, they have an EAP, an employee assistance program, to help deal with like situations like this. Like we know somebody that, like literally everything kind of happened all at once.
Yeah.
And they're talking it out, which is probably like, I commend, because I don't know anybody that would ever do that. Like if I was in the same situation, I probably would be fucking drinking myself silly. Because in the back of my mind, it's like, I can't really talk about these problems. And I think that's the other thing. It's like being able to find somebody that can relate on a level, or maybe somebody that you even trust. And finding somebody to trust is the hardest thing. Like the running joke with my mates is like, "Oh, well, yeah, I've got 3 mates I can trust. It's Johnny, Jimmy, and fucking Jack." And it's like, making jokes like that doesn't help the problem, Because it's like, is it a throwaway line? Or if you're going to go through some shit, are you going to go through that? Which is like, I remember like when one of my mates was going through like when his mum passed away, and he was drinking way more heavily than what like was normal for me from him. Like when we used to go out, and this is like, would go out on a Saturday, get a pizza and like share a sixer, because that's watch fucking Game of Thrones, grab a pizza, drink a sixer. And it got to the point where like when we were doing that, it wasn't fun anymore, because my 3 beers would turn into him drinking whatever. And it was a matter of like me going like to him like, "Mate, like, are you okay?" Like, and he's like, "Oh yeah." I'm like, "But are you really?" And I'm like, like I like to think that I'm a pretty like approachable person, and if like somebody, I think I've gone through, like everybody's gone through shit. It's how you can kind of use your experiences to try to make somebody not feel better, but just talk out the problem. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like you need to have somebody that you trust to talk out a problem, as opposed to trying to numb by any means necessary. It might not even be going alcohol. It might be eating fucking 10 blocks of chocolate.
Yeah.
It might be going to the gym. I know a girl that like went through a bunch of shit, and her way of coping with it was going to the gym and losing a fuck ton of weight.
Yeah.
Didn't fix that problem, She still slept around with numerous people, and power to her for that.
Yeah.
But maybe if she had spoken to somebody, she wouldn't have like suffered numerous injuries, and it might have been a bit easier.
Yeah. I like your point of view where you're saying like you should talk it out. Which anyone out there, if you're going through like a whatever problem, alcohol problem, any addiction problems, like definitely talk it out. But it's also, I think, at the same time, we live in a society right now where we're very accepting of everything. And I am on the other end of that friendship. And I think all of you know that whenever I have a friend that's doing this, I'm not afraid to call them out. And a lot of people are afraid to do it. You know, like the fact that people made an intervention for you, I think it's also like a reminder that like they cared for you. They love, like properly love you, you know?
I mean, I never looked at it like that. I was just like,
Yeah. At that time, obviously at that time, you did not look at that. But I think now you can look back at it and be like, yeah, they cared for me.
I mean, it takes a lot of courage
Yeah.
to be able to go to somebody that you know, or you didn't call a friend and call them on, I won't say bullshit, like call them on something that can be so serious. So like,
Yeah.
I remember when I was like with my mate, I literally spoke to my dad, and if I ever have like something I'm going to run by, my dad is my sounding board. He's the smartest person I know. He's also like one of the most like emotionally intelligent people I know. And I remember he sits there, he's like, if you ever feel that, you know, like if you're concerned, then if you're concerned, somebody else is going to be concerned. So, I mean, it might be like a throwaway, like you might be like, oh, you know, maybe I shouldn't. But what's the worst that can happen if you bring it up?
Yeah. Yeah.
Always seek help.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe for me personally, it's been like religion has always grounded me with that. So I've never been scared of it. And I'm always praying for that person. And I still live by the quote that we have on the back right here, which is, Allah does not burden a soul more than it can bear. And as someone who's went through depressed moments, and you know I've been going through like shit where like I spiral at work and everything.
Yeah.
I do believe like whatever that happens in your life, you can always go through it. It's also that when I see a lot of people go through shit in their life, I'm like, yes, they have gone through shit in their life, but there are a lot of people, including myself, where like they've victimized themselves for way too long for them to be stuck in this like position in life.
It's a crutch.
Yeah, it is. And like they're always like, oh, because I went through this, or because my childhood is this, because I have this, then I can't do this. No, that's a fucking excuse, you know? And it's hard, like it's really hard, because I feel like everyone always gets 3 chances, right? The first chance I'll always give you like, cool, I'll talk to you nicely. And bear in mind, everyone, like listen up before I go off. It's like, I'll always tell them nicely first. Look, I think you have, like, let's say you have a drinking problem, right? Look, I think you have a drinking problem. We have to solve like something. I love you too much to not say this to you. And if you reacted like how you felt that way, right? This person's just attacking me. Fair enough. But then if it keeps going on, they'll be like, look, there's a problem with this. Like, we have to do something about it. And you still don't listen. Fine. The final straw, where I've done this to quite a few people in my life, I'll be like, I've already told you 3 times. This is fucked. You can fuck your life out as much as you want, but I promise you this is a problem. And if you don't see it, I'm just going to walk away from you.
I mean, it goes back to the saying that you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Yep. That's biblical right there, bro.
And like, I think to an extent, everybody is like that. I mean,
Everybody, yeah, including myself. Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those ones where, like, you know, you sit there and you look, and the first time you're always going to have what they call kiddie gloves, so you're not going to take it too seriously. And I mean, like, well, we've all been there. I'm like a similar kind of vibe. I'll be like, I guess the difference, I'm like, why? Like, you know, like when my mate was with his, like, mum, I'm like, you know, is your mum passing away, like, part of this? Is there something else that's happening?
Yeah.
And then he's like, yeah, fuck off. I'm like, okay, cool. And then if it keeps on spiraling, thankfully, like on the second time, I was just like, look, like, mate, like, this is so far out of character for you. Like,
Yeah.
I guess it's also a problem because when you sit around and you tell somebody, like, we need to fix this, not everybody views, like, that as a problem because there's always a justification.
Yep.
Like,
And it's harder when it's like your best friend or your
Correct.
partner, your wife, whoever it is, you know.
so, I mean, I don't think we're ever going to get an answer.
Yeah.
As long
it's a
as
journey.
people like have problems and they don't want to talk about it, and like
They
it
don't wanna
takes
solve it.
it takes a lot of courage to even talk about it. Like the hardest step is to talk about it.
Yeah.
Like so much so that I neglected like even thinking about or talking about like drinking until I was like 37, 38, 36, 36, 37. And at that point in time, I've been probably drinking like heavily for 15 years.
Yeah. Yeah. We can end it off there with like, dude, even though we have like a 10-year age gap, like, I don't want to use the word proud, but like, I'm just happy to see where you're at now compared to your past. I'm sure you had your fun, but at the same
Way too
time,
much.
way too much, yeah.
Hans Moment, I am 17.
And also like the fact that I even got to inspire you, just even like 1% to work out just from my Instagram stories. Like I'm happy for you, man. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, when you're telling people to go to the fucking gym every day.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe I'll start putting it on the podcast Instagram as well, just to push everyone to the gym as well.
Go to the fucking gym.
Yeah. So to anyone with addictions, alcohol, even if people say, "Oh, you're just distracting yourself with the gym," go and fuck yourself. It is a healthy thing to do. Change your mindset a little bit. It is for your future benefit, but you still have to talk about your problems, yeah, and not sleep around like your friend did. So
I mean, hey, whatever floats your boat.
yeah, but
Just be safe.
be safe and go to the fucking gym.
Go to the gym.
Come on, with more strength, man. You've been going to the gym. Let's go.
Go to the gym.
Shut.
Dude, it's like he's enticing you.
It's like he's trying to seduce you. Go to
People have different ways.
go to the gym, bro. Like,
I'll
Go
meet
to the
you.
gym and you'll hear that voice more often.
I'll meet you in the change room
when they
after.
actually start going to the gym, they'll hear like, "Go to the gym, bro." They're like, "Oh God."
It's like, I'll be waiting for you in the change room after.
Oh God, that's great, man. That's perfect. Oh, this is gonna be our longest episode.
I feel for you editing that, man.